A lot of you guys are still struggling with whether or not this game is going to run well on your computer. And so I thought I would give you guys a sneak peek at how I'll be playing the game on day one, what my settings are, what the visual quality is going to look like, what my frame rate's going to look like. I have some good news for you. This game is running better than I should be able to even expect it to run on the hardware that I have. So I'm going to show you what I've done to tweak my settings to get it to run this way, both on the benchmark and on the beta. And the beta, which is about a 6-month-old build right now. I'm going to show you guys how I crank out extra performance out of this game. And I'm going to show you what even a 6-month-old build looks like right now. I'm going to bust a few myths along the way, some concerns you guys have had about upscaling and frame gen and all that nonsense. I hope that by the end of this video, you'll feel more comfortable with your situation. And I also hope that you'll have a better understanding of how all this stuff comes together and some of the steps that you can take to get the performance that you're looking for once this game actually comes out. Let's start with a benchmark because that is a newer build and you can see closer to the type of performance that I am going to expect from the game. Now, this isn't the final build of the game. I'm going to go over that yet again in another video, but this is the closest thing we have right now to how well the game's going to perform in terms of the frame rate that I can expect. So step one, I'm running this on a Gigabyte M32Q, which is a 1440p display, 32-inch, big, bright, beautiful colors, great display. It's a native 1440p display running borderless window. It's going to be your best bet. I'm turning off HDR. In terms of my graphic settings, we're going to start with medium and then we're going to modify it. So as you can see, we have upscaling enabled, frame gen enabled. We're going to change our upscaling from performance to quality because performance renders at a much lower resolution than it upscales. Quality renders at a higher resolution and then upscales to 1440p. I'm not going to touch my sharpness. Ray tracing off. Now, some of you are wondering, why doesn't my machine take a big hit when I turn ray tracing on? That's because there's not a whole lot in this game that's ray traced. In fact, right now anyway, you've got bodies of water, you've got reflective surfaces. That's what ray tracing is going to do for you. And so until we get to like an ice map or monsters with lots of ice shards, or bodies, lots of big bodies of water, ray tracing is not going to do anything for you in this game. So keep it off until you get to those parts in the game. Then turn it on and see if it improves your visual quality enough that you can justify the frame rate trade-off. Textures for me are very important. So I'm going to click high textures. Filtering quality, we're going to go high as well. Now, fur quality on this, I'm going to turn to high. And you'll see later that I turn fur quality down to low for the beta because the beta is has some issues with fur quality. So sky cloud quality, don't care too much, but my tree quality is important to me. So I'm going to crank that up. I'm going to keep all these settings on. Wind simulation, we're going to keep it at high. Surface quality is important to me. Sand quality is important to me. Look, if my card can handle it, I'm going to do it because that really helps me in terms of immersion. Now, in terms of render distances and shadow qualities and so forth, medium's okay for me. I don't really pay much attention to the shadows. I just need them there. I don't like these settings. Bloom, off. I just don't like it artistically. Motion blur, off. I don't like it artistically. Vignette, off. Depth of field, off. I hate all that stuff. We're going to keep the shaders balanced. Pretty decent setting, somewhere in between medium and high. And for me, textures are probably the most important thing after frame rate. So that's why I bumped them up. Now keep in mind, I'm running this on a RX 6650 XT. This is a 1080p GPU. It's designed to work really well at 1080p. It only has 8 gigs of VRAM. High textures are fitting in this. I'm doing just fine. There's my frame rate. As you can see, it's running really well and it's looking good. It's loading the textures properly. Visual effects are good. Clarity's good. So the upscaling is not causing any issues. This looks really sharp and clean on my display, full screen. And again, it's a 32-inch. Most people will play 1440p at a 27-inch. So my pixels are actually bigger on this display than what everyone else is using at 1440p. And I still have a good experience. Things are still very clear and sharp on this larger display. So my average is going to end up in the 80s, mid 80s. Now, what does this mean? A lot of people are thinking right now, well, if you got frame gen on and your average is 85, that means your native FPS is 42.5. It's going to be close to that. You're right. It's going to be 45, 50. And so then your next thought is, well, you're not supposed to run frame gen unless you have 60 FPS, right? That's what AMD says, right? Don't run it unless you got 60, right? Right? Wrong. Absolutely wrong. And I know where you're getting that. You're getting that from Digital Foundry. That is a myth. I'm going to bust that as one of my myths in my myth busting video. But you can see it for yourself. Frame gen at this range is not causing ghosting issues. It's not causing glitches. It's not causing, well, you can't tell if there's input lag because this is just a on-rails benchmark, right? We're going to go into the beta now and we're going to do the same thing. And I'm going to play it and I'm going to test it for input lag. Do I have an input lag tester? No. Beyond my fingers, right? People who play Monster Hunter know when there's input lag. I'm telling you that right now. We can tell. We've all got our own input lag meters built into our hands. Now let's open up a 6-month-old build of the game. You can tell that it's 6 months old because my VRAM usage is much higher for roughly the same settings. A couple settings are different just because I don't have the same exact options in the beta as I do in the benchmark, but I'm getting them as close as possible to each other as I can. And so you can see it's the same monitor, the same resolution, 1440p. Now we're going to go over to the graphical settings. We have quality upscaling, frame gen enabled, high textures. Oh, I forgot to change my texture filtering to high for this one. It doesn't make that big of a difference, and in fact it's just going to make the game look better. My grass quality, my tree quality is high, water quality high, surface quality high, the water effects enabled. I think the only thing that I kind of screwed up there is the texture filtering, but I turned off all this other visual garbage too. And let's see what this looks like. So one thing I noticed early on is in this beta, the fur on the skin here looks kind of weird. There is some ghosting when I turn the camera. I'm going to turn the fur quality down just because I don't need it right now. While there's still a little bit of ghosting left, the fur actually looks better with fur quality low. This is just a result of this being a 6-month-old build. And at this point, Capcom had not done any type of frame gen optimization on this game. So you will see some ghosting in here as a result. Remember, guys, frame gen is not just a toggle that the developers switch on and off. It's something they have to actively code into the game. The game has to support it with custom code. And so if you just integrate it into the game without much forethought, yeah, you're going to see exactly this right here. You're going to see this ghosting. This isn't a result of a low frame rate. This is a result of poorly integrated frame gen. That's all that is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can see it around the edge of the weapon for the most part is where you're going to see it. And yes, this is a lower frame rate, as you can see. With frame gen on, I've got 72 frames, 75 frames. And so that means my native is about 35. So I'm reaching the lower limit of what AMD tells you should do. AMD says absolutely not. Don't run frame gen lower than 30 FPS. So no input lag here. I can tell you that right now. I did not have issues. My issues are, I don't know this guy's moves. It's not input lag issues. So you can see the frame gen is not holding up very well. Is it a result of the FPS being that low, or is it a result of bad code? Definitely a result of bad code, because it's not consistent ghosting. It's really not very frequent, even with bad code and even with this low native FPS. It's actually quite decent. So I'm confident those bugs will be worked out for the day one patch. You know, there's going to be a day one patch. There always is. This is PC gaming. Some other issues that people have with the frame gen. A lot of people say, oh yeah, input lag just gets shot. Your input lag's not going to be worse than your base, your pre-interpolation frame rate. So if your pre-interpolated frame rate is 30, you're going to have input lag, which is about equal to 30 frames per second. And for some people, that's just too much. For Monster Hunter, nothing relies on input faster than that. All your moves are going to be based around 30 FPS. All your input timings and your evades, your dodge bolts and all that stuff. You don't need anything higher than a 30 FPS in engine to pull off all your moves. A lot of the visual blurriness, a lot of the nastiness to this beta is this sandstorm. And I don't like it personally. That's art direction. That's not the engine. That's not frame gen. That's just art direction. It was designed to look like shit. And while I don't agree with that, it's not the technology, right? Everything's coated in sand. That's how they wanted it to look. Maybe they've gotten the feedback from that, from us, and are going to brighten things up a little bit during this sandstorm, I hope, because this is just ugly. It's ugly, but again, this is 1440p. It is as sharp as the art director wants it to be right now. But if we take a look as the sandstorm clears up, you can tell, right? This isn't just, the beta is starting to run better, right? No, this is sandstorm's not here in this little valley. The monster's not covered in blue sand anymore. Look how bright and detailed this creature is. All right. Look at the color starting to come back into everything. It actually starts to look good now. And this is art direction, but you can really see what this game looks like. My frame rate is actually going up over time. All right. And yeah, you can see my 1% low. My 1% low FPS is 59. So I'm right on the edge there. That's a post-interpolation. So we want a pre-interpolation of 30, 29 and a half. Just barely dipped under what AMD says you should run frame gen on. So I am still good here. And that looks nice. Look at that monster. Look at the beauty in that. Yeah, still some ghosting around my character. That is, look at that night shot too. Nice contrast. Nice clarity and the smooth motion on that monster. It just looks fantastic. This is so much better than what I got in World, for sure, on the same hardware. So yeah, you can run frame gen if your native is less than 60 FPS, not going to be a problem. And you can push the limits of your card, for sure. Again, this is a 1080p card and I'm running 1440p. I'm not having issues here, folks. And this is the beta. Okay. Are you having issues with the beta? Okay, that's fine. It's not because your hardware sucks. It's not because the game sucks. Well, it is because the beta sucks, right? But the beta isn't the final release. It's not because WILDS sucks and it'll never look good and never run well on your system. If you have the recommended specs on your system, you're gonna be just fine. But you got to do your part too, right? You got to make sure your driver is updated, especially on the NVIDIA side, because something that a lot of people don't realize, those NVIDIA drivers they don't exist in a vacuum. When you update your NVIDIA driver, you are getting updates specific to games, okay? They will work with Capcom to make sure that their drivers are updated for this game. A lot of you don't realize that, do you? It's true. It's not just, we're fixing our driver and, the lab tester said, we found this bug, so we're going to fix it, or we got too many complaints about this bug, so we're going to fix it and update the driver. Those NVIDIA drivers are fixed on a per game basis, and they have specific fixes and modifications based on what the publishers and game developers need them to have. If they haven't done this already, there will be a NVIDIA driver update that addresses specific issues with Monster Hunter Wilds. You need to do your part. Keep your drivers up to date. Make sure all of your special driver features are turned off, like all that stuff in your driver control panel. AMD calls it adrenaline control panel. Turn off all the extra crap in there, all those cool driver features, and let the game handle everything. Turn features on in the game, not in the driver panel itself. For those of you guys with higher end cards that know what you're doing, do whatever you need to do. But for most people, especially with the mid-tier and low-end cards and maybe older cards, you got to turn all that driver panel stuff off. That's where you want to be starting from. Enable features in the game and then go from there. This thing looks fantastic. That's really the bottom line. And it's the beta. And I get it. You guys have different experiences. Welcome to PC gaming. If you haven't figured that out already, it's time to understand that right now. Your experience will be different from mine and different from the next guy's. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. Once you step into the PC gaming realm, you need to learn how to take care of your hardware and your software and your drivers. And you need to be prepared for the first month or so of the game kind of sucking. Is it going to suck as bad as the beta? Absolutely not. It's going to run so much better than the beta. Is it going to be fully optimized? Absolutely not. It's not going to be fully optimized. I've got a lot of thoughts on that too. And unfortunately, that's just the way PC gaming is going to be for the foreseeable future. But as you can see on my low end graphics card, I'm just barely above the recommended specs. I can squeeze out performance that is higher than I should be able to expect from the beta, no less. And so I have confidence that if you have hardware that meets the recommended, or maybe even just one step below the recommended, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine. You may need to do a little troubleshooting. You may need to do a little configuration and testing. But if you're right around where I'm at in terms of hardware, take a look at all these settings. Try to mirror what I've done here. See if this actually helps you get the performance that you are expecting. And if you're expecting anything more than this, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get 100 FPS, not until we get like patch number 3 out of Capcom. I would not be surprised to see somewhere beginning of April, maybe mid-April, me getting a native 60 frames per second. And I'm still going to run FrameGen because I want that 120 frames per second. Put it on your calendar. I would say maybe the second or third patch, I'm expecting 100 FPS with this configuration right here. And much better visual quality. No ghosting, just no weirdness. Whatever glitches that you might be seeing, just that stuff gone. So that's what I got for you. This is how I'm going to be playing the game. This is what I am expecting. And hope you guys can get whatever issues worked out that you're having so we can all have a good time playing cross-platform, right? With all the Xbox and PlayStation players. That's going to be fun. All right, guys. I got tons more for you on the way. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your beta.